of Enterprise Security with Trusteer.
So you're here today demonstrating a particular threat related to Twitter, but first of all, give us a bit of a background on Trusteer and where things have come from for you.
Trusteer is mostly known as a fraud prevention solution, and we've been protecting online banking customers doing financial transactions, securing those transactions against financial fraud and advanced malware. We've expanded our technology and now protect enterprise endpoint users from exploitation of endpoint user applications like Java, Flash, Adobe Acrobat, and browser vulnerabilities that are exploited to download malware on those endpoints and exfiltrate data outside of the organizations. Today, that's the way APTs and targeted attacks are started.
So we've been talking a lot at Infosec 2013 about, well, many aspects really of security at the minute, namely cloud and mobile, and in particular the threats related to user endpoints. And you've identified a particular risk associated with Twitter, haven't you? Tell us a little bit more about where this has come from and how it was identified first of all.
Right, so we've noticed on the enterprise endpoints that we're monitoring today, and we today monitor 30 million endpoints around the world. We've seen in a few endpoints that malware that it was usually previously known as financial malware was stealing the authentication code of Twitter and using it to, with the API, to post malicious links, malicious tweets on behalf of the Twitter user, spreading them to all of the user's followers. And then when the followers get these tweets with the shortened URL, which you can't tell if that's malicious or not, they click it and they get infected with the malware itself. So the malware is actually spreading through these malicious tweets to more and more users. And through that, it's really a new way to spearfish more users, in fact, more users getting the malware to spread out, enabling attackers to gain a foothold on enterprise endpoints and from there, the network.
So in actual fact, with all of the efforts that companies are putting into securing their networks, actually they're using this social network as their route in to go and do damage elsewhere.
That's right, and it's because enterprises have invested so much in perimeter defenses, attackers are now looking for the weakest point, and the weakest point today is vulnerable endpoint user applications, like web applications, like the browser, like Java applications. They are all vulnerable, and using those, exploiting these vulnerabilities, you can actually download malware on these endpoints, steal information, and send it out to the attackers, enabling them to progress the attack.
Obviously, Twitter is used by so many companies as a marketing tool. That has implications not only for their data security, but also for their reputations amongst their Twitter followers as well, doesn't it?
Yes, that's definitely a risk.
So looking at it from the social network point of view, are you finding that organisations of a certain type are being targeted, or is it really across the board?
It's across the board, but really what the attackers are looking to is get a foothold in enterprise networks. And there are very few controls that are able to stop these, because usually they exploit zero-day or unknown vulnerabilities. Really, exploit prevention is the only technology that can completely stop these types of attacks.
Is it just limited to Twitter or other social networks vulnerable to this?
Absolutely not. We've seen similar types of attacks on Facebook, on other social networks. So definitely social media is used to spread malware and to infect users.
Now I know here on the Trusteer stand you've been giving demos today of how easy it is to post these links on people's Twitter feeds, and giving some ideas on how companies can protect themselves. What are the sort of solutions that you recommend to organisations who have experienced this or are worried about experiencing this in the future?
Right. So most companies deploy controls that try to detect the threat as it's coming in the network. And that's bound to fail because attackers are looking at blacklisting rules, whether you're blacklisting files, signatures, behaviors, what have you. The attackers just work around those rules and bypass the controls. The right way to protect against these threats is by controlling the application execution and validating that it's executing only legitimate operations, which is what Trusteer is doing. We look at the action and then combining with inspection of this application state, we validate the execution. I'll give you an example. If you see a browser downloading a file, how do you know if it's legitimate? Well, if it's a user saving a file from the browser, that's fine. But if it's a drive-by download, obviously that's not something you want to allow happen. You can't tell if the file download is malicious or legitimate unless you validate the state in which the download takes place. And by looking at the application state, looking at the memory and the kernel processes, we can tell if this is a legitimate operation or malicious, and based on that, we can accurately decide if we should let the downloaded file execute or stop it from executing.
Looking towards the future, I mean, everyone's seen these funny looking links on their own Twitter feed. As a personal Twitter user, I've noticed them along the time. Have organisations realised this soon enough, or is there a lack of awareness out there, and how are you dealing with that moving forward?
Enterprises have tried to deal with this for a long time, and every control every means they've taken so far has failed. They try to educate users not to click on malicious links or suspicious links, and that has failed. The users still click them, and especially with the Twitter attack, you're using a shortened URL which masks the real URL, so the user has no way to know if this is suspicious or not. And we see users clicking suspicious links all the time, so that has failed. We've tried to patch vulnerable applications to prevent these exploits, but that has failed as well. It's just impossible to keep up on patch levels on all enterprise endpoints. We've tried to detect the threat coming in and stop it, and that has failed. So really the only way to stop these exploits and stop users from getting infected by accessing malicious websites is by ensuring that the application is executing correctly, legitimately, and not exploited. So that's why zero-day exploit protection is so important to enterprises these days.